Welcome back to Just Blazor Programming. Today we're going to be discussing state. Now, if you don't know what state is, because I know some of you don't have a .NET or a JS background, state is basically how a web application handles data without it being saved to some place like the server or a database. It is basically information that gets saved on the client side temporarily so that you can finish whatever you have to do and that the user doesn't lose progress in whatever they're doing. An example of keeping state, a practical example would be the cart in an e-commerce site. So you have not bought any of the items in your cart yet. You're just filling it up. But you're probably sifting through other pages in order for you to look for whatever items you're looking for. But when you do that every time, without keeping state, your cart will become empty because you've just moved away from it. So information does not get saved. And this is what the default state of Blazor. And you're going to see what I'm talking about once I go into the tutorial. So what we need to do is set up a way in order to keep this information from leaving us when we move between pages. Now, if you're coming from a JS framework like Angular or React, you probably are used to having these state, keeping state with something like Redux or with something like Flux or something like that. Blazor has something called Fluxor that you could use, but we're not going to go into that now. This is a basic tutorial how you can build your own state, how you can keep state without actually going out into the world and bringing in a package into your Blazor project. So it's going to be very simple. It's probably going to be the most simplest state explanation you'll ever find on the internet ever. Asterisk right there, please. Perfect. So let's get started. So as tradition dictates, we're going to get started on a brand new project here. Someday I'll break the tradition, but not today. So we're just going to make a brand new Visual Studio Blazor project. So create a new project. We'll be using the Blazor server this time again. I believe for Blazor WebAssembly and Blazor server, they might be a little bit different, but because this is going to be the intro easy example, we're going to be using the easiest thing I can come up with, which is on Blazor server. So Blazor server, Blazor app, state. Whatever. How you guys been? Did you miss me? Did you miss me? It's been a week since this video's up. Anyways, anyhow. Here it is. A brand new normal Blazor project. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to create a brand new page in the Blazor project. And then in that page, we're going to be creating a form. And in that form, we're going to actually apply a state to that form so you can maintain whatever you got to maintain. Now, if you want to see whether or not your actual web application has state already enabled somewhere, well, here is a very easy test. But once this gets started, you'll see. All right, so let's go to counter. That's going to click this a few times and you see the number going up. I'm going to go back home and go back to counter. Boom, 0. Didn't get saved. That's how you know there's no state being implemented. So before I continue, actually, let me give you a little deep dive on how everything works in the background. What you see in a Blazor application when you move between pages, you're not actually navigating to different pages. What's happening is you're re-rendering whatever the page is over and over again, because this is all basically virtual. So we're not actually navigating to different pages. Now for Blazor for Blazor server, things work a little bit. I believe everything gets shared. So if you add something to a state through the AddScoped method, which I'll get into, they all can share it when they're on the same tab. But if I made another tab, went there, then you will have a different, then you will not be sharing the state of this tab with this tab. So that is something you have to keep in mind. So to make this explanation easier, I'm going to get into what I'm talking about more. But essentially, whatever state that we're saving can be shared upon among these different pages within one tab, but not between tabs in your browser. So just keep that in mind and it will make sense to you as we go along. So like I said, we're going to be creating a new page. So get the, no, not the index, oops. Want our nav menu layout, and we want to go to the pages here, add a new Razor component, and we're just going to call this form state. All right, that's good for now. And then down here, we're going to add that to the actual nav menu. Just a little bit here. So all I've done is add something called for state for now. Now I'm going to add a tab basically for that. Form state. Don't worry, we'll be adding the page URL right now. And at page form state. So make sure that's the same. Perfect. So now we have our brand new page that we can now navigate to. What are we going to do on this page? Well, we're going to create a brand new form. So for this, we're just going to make an edit form. And we'll be creating the model in a minute. So before we do that, I'm just going to create all the stuff inside of it real quick. So we're going to copy paste. So as you can see, what I have here is essentially a div with a class of warp control, div class m-3, with 2 input texts and a submit button. Oh, and I need to add the model for this, which is going to be, no, we're going to call it profile. It's not going to be profile state just yet. Here, profile. So what we need to do here is actually add a, what do you call it? We got to actually add a model. Actually add the class is what I meant. So what is wrong with this? Am I missing a div at the bottom? Yes, I am. Perfect. So what I've done so far, in case this was going a little too fast for you, is I created an edit form with a model of profile. We haven't created the class here. We're going to make that now. And within here, I've created a form control of a div class with a button in it. Just a normal button to submit. It's not going to do anything. So it's just there for us aesthetic reasons more than anything. And we have 2 input texts. So the first input text is going to be for username, and the other one's going to be for password. So actually, no, I'm going to call it first name and last name. That's what I called the class in the properties in the last class I did before I did this. Call it first, last, and change the for to whatever the ID is. So if this is your first time with a form, this might be a little confusing for you, but if you need a little bit more help, I have a video right there. You can check that out. But just make sure that your IDs match the labels. And we have a first name and a last name. It's going to be a very simple form. So now we're going to go into and create a new class that will be the representative of this model. So new item, class, and I'm going to call it profile. It'll be public. And within here, we're going to make a public string first name and last name. So that's good. Make sure that that's the same thing that I got here. Perfect. Alrighty. So the last thing we're going to need to do is instantiate this. Oh, and we have to also add the using statement for the data to get access to this library. So call it that. Approach that data. Profile equals new, just to try out the new shorthand for creating a new object. So that's all we got to do. We have our last name, first name all bound to each other. And we're going to test out this form real quick. Make sure I made no mistakes. Test. Doesn't do anything. Just for show. If I go back to fetch data and I come here, yep, everything, I lost all the data here. So that means that we have no state. and we want to create state. So how do we do that from this normal form? Well, to do that, we need to create a service, and we need to create it as an AddScoped within the program.cs. So you don't know what's happening here. This is basically us adding services within our program so that we could use it in different pages and stuff. So this is going to be no different. In this case, we're going to be adding a service just so I could handle state. So before we can actually add anything to the AddScope stuff, and I'm going to get into that once I start actually writing that here, we need to create an object to represent this the profile state. So basically, we're going to be creating another object that's just like this. So to that end, I'm going to go and create just a new file. Add new folder. And within this new folder, wait, did this add it outside or inside? Okay, good. All right. So I'm going to call this new folder the state objects folder. And within here, we're going to add all our state values. So if you were to use this in other pages, normally you want to say reserve adding state to something that's really important, or in parts of your code, or not parts of your code, parts of your program where you want to maintain information, but maybe not in all the parts of your code. So they're all kind of different. But in this case, we're going to be adding a new class as well. In fact, I'm just going to be copying this class just to make it easy. So I copied profile down here, but I'm going to rename it to ProfileState. So that's what you saw earlier. So, and this namestate has to change as well. Namespace. Come on. Make sure I wrote it correct. Object. I'm going to clean the solution to make sure that it actually does read it. If I went back to here. Perfect. All right. Yeah, I was just checking to make sure that state objects is recognized. So sometimes you got to refresh the solution, which is fine. So basically our profile state is the class that I created and separated into a different folder. It has the exact same properties that the first class does. So what are we going to do special to this? We're going to add a service for this specifically. So how do we do that? I'm going into my cheat sheet. Well, the first thing we got to do is add that new folder up here and make sure we have access to it. So now we have that folder access, and we will now make a service out of it. So this is what I was talking about in the beginning when I said that we're going to create a scoped service. So what does that mean in Blazor? Well, you have a few different kinds of scopes, a few different kinds of what's going on here? Oh, no, it's also called ProfileState. Well, sorry about that, guys. Copying and pasting is hard. But anyways, I fixed that issue now. You didn't have to delete anything. If you saw what happened, I just left the name of ProfileState up here by accident, and that was my fault. So what's happening here is that for AddScoped, AddScoped is basically a scope dependency that will persist across the different pages, but it will not persist across different tabs. So that's what I was talking about. There's a difference between how Blazor handles navigation. So when you go to a different page through the URL, what's going to happen is that it's going to re-render these pages. So that's why each tab is going to be a little bit different. And what this does is allows you to share the actual the dependency. So in this case, our profile state throughout the actual instance of that tab. but not between tabs. So if you have a different tab, then it's going to be a whole different instance. So AddScoped is one of the three different service types that exists, or that you're probably going to be familiar with when you go into Blazor. But in this case, just know that all this does is allows this to be shared within your specific user session for that specific instance across whatever it is you have access to in that instance, but not across browsers and not across users. So in this case, it's not gonna be that clear because it's just gonna be you and you're gonna be running this like one page thing, but that's essentially what that means. Oh yes, there's my problem. So I should have, so that is the old code here. So what are we going to do with this? We are going to inject something into here in order to have access to this new scoped, to have access to what we've just scoped. So the profile state specifically, we are going to do an inject instead. Oh, it doesn't see it. All right. We actually have to import that library. State object. Now you might be asking, why don't I just turn that that profile into the AddScoped instead of me making a whole new class within a whole new library? The reason why is because I'm trying to separate the two for the lesson. You could do that if you want to, but personally I find it better that if you just separate your objects more clearly in this way. So if you're making like a state object in this case, always give it the name state and you'll be good, because you might use this class somewhere else as a normal class. So when it comes to state in this particular example is going to be specific to this one particular instance or one particular part of the program. So go to add inject. Goodness. Profile state. Call it profile state. So what we're gonna see is we're gonna actually get rid of this, and we're gonna replace this object with profile state. So now we have our state, basically the state the object that represents our state, injected into our page. It has been scoped, so the service is available to anything that is within the scope of our session and only to us as a user. No issues so far. So now we go test. Boom, there it is. It has been saved. State has been saved. Ain't that great, guys? I know it took a little bit of time to get here for a very simple example, but I wanted to explain what happens in the back end. When it comes to scope, it really just represents on what has access to this service. So in this case, this is the scope, this whole thing. So if I were to go here, then the state will not be saved, as you can tell. This state has the two things I wrote here, but if I went here, it doesn't have anything because of the scope. So I could go into the other two scope, the two other service types in a different video, more in depth, a little bit with easier examples. So just for now, when you do create your states, you kind of want to do what I'm doing here, because you're not going to be doing anything between users, I think, unless you're making like a game or something. Then that's a whole different can of worms. But for normal use, AddScoped usually works well, and it can be shared between it. So actually share this the actual state of this data across everything else here. But I will save that for a different lesson, because it's already been kind of a lot. But just remember, when it comes to state, what you need is an object to represent your state in this example. Have it scoped in the program.cs file. Have it through builder.services.AddScoped and whatever the name of your object is, and then you can inject that into whatever page you are using in order for you to maintain that value, because that will be maintained throughout that session. But remember that it's only for that session. It's only for you. You, the user, are the only ones who have access to the state, and your other browsers or your other tabs in your browser do not have access to that same state, at least not with the AddScoped. So I hope that clears some things up. I know it was a little confusing and there was a lot of background information, and most importantly, understand that the Blazor pages do not actually point to any pages. What happens is they get re-rendered via the code. So that's why you have this whole, like the whole reason why you have lifecycle components and all that stuff is because lifecycle methods, right, mentioned for your components, is because it does that. It just re-renders whatever it is you're asking all the time. And this was just one way of keeping information on the client side before you do whatever you want with it. So that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this lesson on Blazor. I know that it got a little long-winded here, but I believe going over the basics of what's happening in the background will help you going forward, because things won't get easier from here. And if you want to do anything in state, this is a very easy way of setting it up. It's not the only way. There are packages out there that do it for you in different ways, but this is probably the easiest example I've encountered so far. So with that being said, thank you very much, and I'll see you later.